Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we connect, engage, and empower fathers to be the best dads they can be for their families and communities. And now, your hosts are Bruce Stapleton and Pastor Eli Williams.
Well, hello and welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast. Thanks for joining us today. And hello, I'm Bruce Stapleton, father, grandfather, and owner of the Momentum Group.
Hello, Bruce, and hello, friends. So glad you joined us today. I'm Eli Williams. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. I'm an author. I wrote the book, Fathering Strong. Actually, that's not a book. It's more of a program. But Father Love, which is my book, about 8 years ago, for fathers. I am a pastor and I'm president of Urban Light Ministries. We're the nonprofit that powers Fathering Strong. So glad you're with us today.
Yeah, so glad. And Eli, I think the blog post this week that you did was pretty insightful. And we're going to get into some of the things about order keeping, which I think is a hugely important topic, especially from things that are happening in regards to the economy and politics and everything today as it relates to fathers and, what their need for keeping order is. And so we're going to, as you said, talk about our POPs 101 course, and we're going to hit the O in POPs, which is order keeping. Last time we talked about the protectors, but I think this is an important topic on order keepers as well. So Eli, why don't you just sort of jump us in and talk to us a little bit about what the blog post was about, why order keepers are important, and we'll get started.
Yeah, we've all heard the saying, boys will be boys, and that's kind of cute. It's kind of trite. But it kind of excuses really bad behavior by boys, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's all right, boys will be boys. When in fact, that could indicate a real problem if that becomes an excuse for not taking bad behavior seriously, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, the trouble is that, yes, there is a tendency of boys to be a bit wild, to be unruly, to be disorderly. That's just a part of growing up. I get that, but unless there is a strong, mature father presence, even if it's not a dad, some father figure in that child's life that can help rein that in, it can become normalized and become acceptable, not just excusable, but acceptable. And before you know it, you've got ingrained bad behavior that has become a part of the personality. And that generally does not end well for a boy. So yes, boys will be boys, but you need a father figure in that boy's life in order for that behavior not to become problematic as that child continues to grow and to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think mothers play a role in that, though? And they can't really help with that, or what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would never suggest that mothers aren't needed and aren't capable of really doing the job when it comes to reining in boys. My mother had 9 of us, right? 13 kids altogether. I've got 8 brothers, 7 of them still living. And she did a great job. My father was a present father, but he worked a lot. I mean, with 13 kids, right? Duh. He had to work a lot. So he wasn't around all the time, but he was home whenever he could be. And he was how shall I say, he was the ultimate enforcer. But mom did a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to raising boys in our home. And she did a great job. So I would never say that women can't do it. But my mother would tell you that we needed our father. Although I hear a lot of, you shouldn't say wait till your dad comes home because that turns the father into a monster. Not necessarily. I think it's only natural that there should be, it's not always natural, but there should be a healthy fear, meaning reverential respect for dad. I think that's a good thing. It doesn't make him a monster. It just means that mom's got backup, So I think I think it's a needed thing. So moms, yes, moms are needed, moms are important, but you certainly are better off when there is a strong father figure who's also loving and nurturing in that child's life.
Yeah, and I think it's a role model. They're the boys are looking for a male role model. The moms play a really important role. I know when I was growing up, my mom definitely was an order keeper, but I didn't feel that she was the order keeper because she would always say, here's your dad. And then as I became a father, my wife continually told me, says, you're responsible for making sure that order's kept around here. Says, I'll do this, but I'm coming to you for the final answer. And you've got to work together. It's a together type of thing. And even in your blog post, Dr. Jeffrey Kennedy, you mentioned, even said that boys want to grow up to be like a male role model. And if you're growing up with an absent father, then they're going to relate to what they know. And if they don't have that role model, they're going to deviate to that behavior, which is not right, but becomes normalized, as you mentioned.
Yeah. There's something special and there's something really important about having a loving, mature, responsible father. And if he's a live-in father, if he lives in the same home, I mean, that's gold there. We know that that's not always the case, but at least a father who is present as much as possible, or a father figure, doesn't even have to be the biological father, but some man who has a relationship with the child, who is themselves mature and responsible, to be in that child's life, to provide that nurturing that can only come from a father, that male nurturance that only fathers can give. Really important that every child have that, especially boys, not exclusively boys, but especially boys. There's something really important about a man being in the life of a boy, and it can be a grandfather, it can be an uncle, older siblings, brothers, mentors, coaches, teachers. All those are important men in a child's life if they take an active interest in that child and invest themselves into that child. Of course, always in partnership with the mother.
Yeah, I got a great story. Last couple of weekends ago, I was with my granddaughter, and and she was misbehaving, and I was trying to correct her, and she goes, "Well, you're not in charge here." And I, mentioned to her. I said, "Well, I'm the father of your mother, so I'm a level above who's in charge. But I'm not here to scold you. I'm here to help you understand what the right behavior is." So it was sort of interesting. She's like, "You're not in charge."
How
So
old?
she is 8.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah.
She's still
She's 8
figuring
going.
things
Yeah, she's 8 going on 30, I think, though. So yes,
out. Yeah, hopefully
she's
she
right.
got the point there, right?
Yeah, she's right at that age where everything. She's the center of the universe. So, but well, I
Yep.
think one of the good stories he talked about in the blog post this week was the one about the elephants. We always use that one in the Pops 101 class because it really illustrates the fact of not having a role model can cause problems not only in the human area but also with animals, and it's a good sort of relationship story. So, why don't we'll jump into that as soon as we get back from this break. So.
We dads and father figures need each other. We need a safe, non-judgmental place to share our stories, challenges, heartaches, and joys. Fathering Strong is just such a place. A new online community of connected, engaged, and empowered fathers. Learn more at www.fatheringstrong.com.
Well, welcome back to the Fathering Strong podcast. We're talking about being protectors this week, or excuse me, order keepers. We did protectors last week. Order keepers, about really the importance of being an order keeper, especially to the sons, that really help them understand what appropriate behavior is. And one of the examples we talk about in our Pops 101 class is elephants and how they acted inappropriately because they had no role models, and they found out that bringing those role models in really caused some changes in behavior. So, Eli, why don't you sort of bring us through sort of that story a little bit on how that evolved into something that we could really look at from an order keeper perspective?
It's an old story, but it's a true story. And we like to refer to it because it does give a great example of what happens in the wild when young creatures don't have mature, responsible male creatures to help regulate their behavior. So, according to the conservationists and the park rangers and all the people who were working there on that particular reserve, there was this group of aggressive young orphaned elephants who were rampaging. They were killing rhinos. Even the rare black rhinos were getting slaughtered by these young male out of control elephants. And what had happened was that the mature elephants, including the males, had been culled from the park. And I forget all the reasons, but they weren't there, and so there were the young male elephants without the bull elephants to help show them what it is to be an elephant and how to behave. And so they were killing the rhinos by sport. I mean, they were just mauling them, ripping them to pieces, and it just was not elephant-like behavior. So the bottom line is that the folks in charge decided what they needed to do was to bring in some bull elephants from another park. So they brought them in, and you can guess what happened. In short order, the bad behavior stopped because the mature male elephants would not allow the young male elephants to do what they were doing. It was like, we don't behave that way. And if you do it again, I'm going to knock you over. That sort of behavior. So it's a good illustration of what we have in society today, in communities. I'll say it starts in individual homes, but when you've got a concentration of young boys, young men who have not had strong fathering, we generally have chaos. Go into those public schools. You'll see. You don't even have to go. I'm sure you know about it. And that's why it's such a good illustration to show how important it is to have mature, responsible males, whether we're talking about elephants or we're talking about humans, who are there to help regulate the behavior and calm the unruly tendencies of boys.
And there's some good examples of that, as you mentioned in schools. I know there's a program, I believe it's in Philadelphia, where there's a group of dads who have agreed to volunteer and they go into the schools and they have improved, the behavior within the schools. And I think if you see dads working together and building those fortresses, if you will, to help calm that behavior and let them know what role models really is about, you see that change. And I believe that's why we have a lot of the problems we do today. We talked, earlier about last week in regards to the Surgeon General saying that the number one problem with kids today, or the number one cause of death, is gun violence. And that in itself, I mean, is a protector and an order keeper piece that a dad could really have control over. It's important not only to help them understand what are the right and wrong things, but to just give them good examples and be a good role model, and let them know, what the appropriate behavior is. Because like you said, if they don't know the appropriate behavior, they're going to do what their friends tell them to do. And it's tough. And it's, if they need those role models.
Yeah, and just for you listening, friend, just so you know, Bruce and I are both boy dads, so we're talking from experience and not just from book learning or from study, but that combined with actual experience of raising boys. And I'm sure some of you who are watching today have your own stories that you could tell, whether in your own personal life or in raising your kids, about the truth of this. It really is the Creator's plan. I mean, his original plan was for every child to have both a mother and a father who lived together with the child to help provide them with 24/7, 365 guidance. That's loving and that's nurturing, that's there to help mold and shape that child. And yes, society has changed a lot, and there are lots of other structures in families. Uh, they may not look like that, mother, father, children living together. But whatever the case, there are certain factors that must be important in order for there to be stability in that family. And we're going to talk about that when we return after this break. We're talking about fathers as order keepers. We hope you'll stay with us.
Do you know a new father who could benefit from a basic introduction to healthy fathering principles? POPS 101, a free online course consisting of 4 one-hour sessions in English or Spanish, could be perfect for him. POPS 101 lays out practical steps toward becoming the protector, order keeper, provider, and stabilizer his child needs. Learn more at urbanlight.org.
Welcome back to Fathering Strong Podcast. We've been discussing the importance of order keepers, and fathers is playing a key role in doing that. And we talked about every child who would love to have a live-in home nurturing biological dad, but we know that that's not the case, and there's many different makeups of families nowadays. But research does show, as you mentioned, that factors are essential for children's well-being, and we want to review some of those factors and hopefully help you with some guidance and understanding, and also know that Fathering Strong is here for you as well. As we build these communities, this is where you can get some additional insight and information from some other dads. So Eli, why don't you jump us off in some of the ways in which we can look at being better order keepers?
Yeah, there's some essentials that are important for every family, no matter what the structure of the household. Uh, First, there needs to be a stable relationship, and it needs to be nurturing. Now, in a subsequent in an incoming episode, we're going to talk about fathers as stabilizers, but this touches on it some. It's important that the relationship be stable. I mean, not coming and going. Children need someone's whenever possible that they know is going to be there. There's not going to be some kind of serial relationships going on where first there's this one guy who's here for a while and then another guy. That's not stability. And those parents in that child's life, whether they're parents or other kinds of caregivers, they need to be nurturing. They need to have the skills to know how to raise up children in a way that's going to result in the best outcomes for their children. That means nonviolent, caring, and empathetic, and all of that. So whether it's biological parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, or other kinds of caregivers, that's needed. That it be stable and that those individuals have nurturing skills as caregivers. There needs to be economic security. In other words, enough money coming in so that there's not constant financial stress, because that's difficult for a child and affects their well-being. There have to be enough resources to meet their basic needs if that child is going to have healthy development. And the other thing is positive parenting practices. Children do best when they've got parents who are responsible to their needs, that they are able to communicate well, giving clear and consistent instruction and expectations. And then there must be positive reinforcement and all of that. As I said, we'll get more into that when we talk about stabilizers. But those are some of the factors important in a household, in a family, for the healthy development of children.
Yeah, I think as you bring up the whole piece on economic security, I know in our lives that was always an issue in regards to, as you're trying to make it in the world and keep your job and do those kinds of things. There are different times where, there may not be as much money in the bank account as you want and things like that. And that does cause stress between me and my wife. But then you could tell that the kids were addressing that as well. And, even though they had a bed to sleep in and a roof over their head, those kinds of stresses can affect them. And, I think those are some important comments. And One of the things it mentioned, for example, when you're instructing parents to teach their children, the commandments of God, talk about, you shall teach them diligently to your children and talk to them when you sit in the house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. And, we tried to do that throughout the lives of our children by making sure that they understood what was right and what was wrong and continually try to talk to them. But now as empty nesters, I could always go back and look and say, really would have wished we'd have done some things differently, but I thought we did pretty good, but, there are always some things you want to improve on, but I think you've got to stay on top of that pretty much all the time.
Yeah, and it means that you've got to be present. I mean, that pretty much covers everything when you talk about being in the house, when you're sitting down, when you're lying down, when you're getting up, when you're walking. That's pretty much all the time. And I know that, most dads who work can't be there 24/7, 365 days a year. But as much as possible, this is what the Lord is requiring. That's what he told his ancient people. This is how you do it. Be there and teach them all the time. And I find it's interesting that the word used there in the Hebrew language, the original language of that scripture, it means to goad. And a goad, you know what a goad is. A goad is a stick with a point on it. And this is what cattlemen used to help the cattle go the direction they want them to go. If they're trying to get them out to pasture or whatever they're doing, they need to provide the cattle with guidance, and they use this stick in order to enforce that, to kind of nudge them to go in the right direction. So it's interesting that the word goad was used because it shows that just as cattle need goading, girls and boys, especially boys, it seems, requires constant gentle prodding and correcting and goading to go the right direction, to do the right thing, to think the right way, to say the right things. It really does need that as a part of the discipline, as a part of the training of a child. So I really appreciated the insight that comes from looking into some of the original words. So, Dad, there you go. Now, it's not talking about using the stick for punishment. That's not what's being talked about here. And certainly, a cattle rancher is not going to damage his cattle. I mean, that's money, right? You want your cattle to be uninjured, so you're not going to do anything that actually hurts them, but rather it's used just as a way of prodding, correcting, and directing the animal. Likewise, in our teaching, we're to do it gently because we want the best outcomes for our children, and that comes from gentle nurturance and not domineering, mean-spirited kinds of training. So that is the thought behind the goading.
Yeah, and I found out that having two sons, each of them's different. You have to be able to react to them differently, and some of them need someone to sit down and listen to them and validate their feelings, and the other one needs sort of more prodding, as you put it. It just depends on what their language is that they're going to hear and understand, and some actually you can talk to them and tell them what to do, and other ones you have to be able to show them. And I know one of my sons, give him the lecture and telling what to do, you could tell he turns you off right away. So that didn't work for him. So you've got to look at making sure you're doing it in a way that connects with each of your sons and daughters in that case. And so for him, it was sort of asking him questions in regards to, so what do you think's wrong with this behavior? How do you feel you should be acting? And those types of questions would help him begin to understand what's right and what's wrong. And I think giving them a safe place where they feel like they can come to you for those kind of questions, because they're going to get bombarded with those with their friends, social media, all different kinds of things, and not knowing what the right answer is, they're going to go with typically what their friends are. And you want to make sure you provide a nonviolent, comfortable way for them to feel like they can come to you and ask those kinds of questions if they have those.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I didn't do this stuff perfectly. No way. I made my share of mistakes, but I hope I learned from them. And it's great to be able to pass on the things that I've learned. I'm now a grandfather of grown-ups. So some things have come with experience, but anytime we can pass along what we've learned to younger fathers or less experienced fathers, we think that's a win. It's important for fathers and mothers to have good communication skills. I mean, sometimes we can be ruled by our feelings, by our emotions, and the moment can be stressful and cause us to communicate in ways that really aren't nurturing. So it's better to have some skills when it comes to communications. For example, it's wise to use I statements. If there's something, if there's been a problem, if there's an issue, if a child needs correcting, it's better to express it by focusing on your feelings rather than what the other person did wrong, or rather than blaming the other person. Words like "I'm really disappointed," and it makes me, really feel bad that you did what you did or you said what you did, and then go on to say why, rather than the finger pointing, you did this and you did that, and the name calling and all that can sometimes happen. And sometimes how shall I say, we kind of go over the top with words like "you always do such and such and such." That's usually not true, and it doesn't help the situation. Now there's been a whole lot of guilt that has been put on the other person, and that doesn't really help. It just makes it worse. It's better to think of it as I'm really disappointed that you did this, without going into and you did that and the other thing in the past. Just talk about the current situation. That's good, using good communication skills, using I statements. It's important to be clear and assertive, to communicate exactly, precisely, and confidently without being aggressive, because aggressive is non nurturing. Be clear and confident, and that will help get the point across. Focus on the problem and not the person. It's always people over things, right? People over issues. People first. Love people first. Love your kid first. And focus on the issue at hand. Focus on the problem and not the person, so that it doesn't devolve into personal attacks and making the child, really feel bad, because that really does not help solve the problem. It's better to talk about the problem and work on that rather than beat down the child for whatever happened.
Yeah, and all that sounds great, but we know in real life sometimes that's hard to do. We come home after a hard day's work, don't have a lot of energy left, and putting those types of strategies together is not easy. You've got to take the time and have the thoughtfulness and understanding that the long-term solution's better than the short-term fix of, just trying to get things fixed right away. And I think all those are great strategies, but trust me, we've been there. We know that sometimes you do them right and sometimes you don't. And it
Yep.
really gets down to brainstorming and trying to work with your kids and help them understand, like I mentioned earlier, what are some of the right ways, and being able to communicate with them effectively depending upon what their style of communication is. And always try to look at focusing on win-win solutions that, you may not always get exactly what you're looking for, but, I think as you said, as long as your child, your son or daughter feels like they're loved, that's the most important thing. And once they feel like they have that protection, hopefully they'll come to you and get some of those answers. But in the end, we as parents, especially as fathers, have got to be the order keepers to make sure that they clearly understand that behavior is not appropriate, and that those things need to change. But we still love them, and if that means compromising on some things, or if that means helping them understand what's right and wrong, I believe all of those are good strategies. But trust me, we know they're not easy. It takes time, takes energy. But we're in the war with you, so hang in there.
Yeah, and never would I suggest that anyone can do this perfectly. And certainly, if you try to do it without the Lord's help, you're kind of going to fail to begin with. We need the Lord. He's the one who models for us good parenting behavior. Take, for example, when we make a mistake, when we do something wrong, God does not send down lightning from heaven to strike us down. He's patient with us. He's kind. He's caring. If we stay in the Word and we stay prayerful, we will learn. He will teach us. His Spirit will guide us and direct us, assuming that we're a Christian and we're in a relationship with Him. We are His child. We're His son, and He treats us with loving kindness, and that's all He's asking, that we emulate Him, that we treat others with the same loving kindness. Yes, we know Judgment Day is coming. I mean, eventually there has to be a day of reckoning for our bad behavior, but that's why He went to the cross and gave His life. He died for our sins, and He's promised that if we confess our sins and we turn from those ways, that He is faithful. He will forgive us for those things, and so He provides our example. So he stays calm and collected. So we can learn to be calm and collected. That means avoiding yelling and name calling and other kinds of aggressive behavior, which the Lord never does to us. We can take the time to cool down. No, we're not God, but believers, true believers, have His Spirit in them that helps us develop the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, patience, which is long suffering and all those kinds of things. So yes, we can, if we submit ourselves to the Lord, learn to take the time to cool down, in a heated moment, if we're tired and we're out of patience and all that. But it's amazing what taking some time to cool down will do. It'll help our blood rate to come down. We can think clearer because our brain is not pumping out all these chemicals that keep us hyped up and ramped up and ready to take some action. But it's amazing what taking a break, calming down will do to help us before we start or continue a conversation with a child or with anyone really. So these are important coping mechanisms, and there are others, that can help us control our anger and our frustration and our difficult emotions. So I want to encourage all the fathers out there and any mothers that may be listening to just realize that God does not expect you to do this on your own, but that He provides His Spirit to help guide us and lead us and direct us, even in our parenting. And I should say probably, maybe especially in our parenting, because we're talking about raising up the next generation to be seeking after Him. So that's a lot. I didn't mean to preach, but I thought it's important that we make sure that we put this in the proper context, that we're only humans and we're not going to do this perfectly. Yes, we are going to make mistakes, but the Lord is there and He wants to walk with us even through our parenting journey.
Yeah, and bringing Him into the conversation continually helps express that sometimes it's not coming from you, it's coming from God, it's coming from the Word. And if you can help your children understand that, hopefully you can enlighten them on what that means for them, and they can build a stronger relationship with God as well. And I think building that consistency, over their childhood is really what the important thing's about. I mean, yeah, we're going to make mistakes a lot of times, but I believe also, if we can consistently grow in the Word and show children the proper behavior and how that relates to, building those relationships with God, I think that in the long run is really what's going to get them to be the order keeper and live a life that they're going to be happy with. And
Yes.
if that even means, we do something wrong sometime and we got to apologize, then, I think they know we're not perfect. But I think having them see that helps them also understand, no one's perfect. They're not perfect. We're not perfect. And, we still love them no matter what the behavior is. And when you finally get those positive outcomes, celebrate those and,
Yes.
and help them see what good behavior is about and reward that behavior. And, they always like getting rewards. They always like, getting those affirmations. I think that's a really important piece. We know sometimes we're going to have to disagree, and that's okay. But I think if we can show them those positive affirmations of when they do things well, that's really what they're looking for. And as we mentioned early on in the podcast, they can get those positive affirmations from their friends, or they can get the positive affirmations from the parent. And I think, we want to be the ones that they're following the guidance, just like those elephants did when they got those affirmations from, the father elephants to show them what was right and what was wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. We've covered a lot, but those are important tips that dads, if you follow them, you'll be able to set a good example for your kids in how to navigate difficult times without violent behavior, to live and respond to different situations in a cool, calm, and collected way. We're actually teaching them by our behavior how to handle their own conflicts in life. And there's a better chance that they are going to grow up and be mature and responsible, contributing citizens themselves and stay out of trouble and not be prone to grab a gun or a knife or anything else, any kind of wild and unruly behavior, because you have showed them how it's done. That's essential. And for all the dads and father figures out there, I applaud you for being in your child's life. And it's good to reach out, even if we've got the ability, to to children that who are growing up without a father. And sometime soon we're going to have an episode on mentoring, being a father figure for a child who is not your own, who perhaps does not live in your life, in your family.
And if you're struggling and you're still looking for help and you need some coaching, or you need to talk to someone, make sure you join Fathering Strong and get involved into community where those dads are talking about issues that we've talked about in the podcast. It's important for dads to talk, and I know sometimes it's tough for us dads to really want to get involved with others, but I think that's really the whole purpose of Fathering Strong, is just to get some connections and really build those relationships and find out, hey, you're not the only one dealing with those problems. There are many other people out there going with this under the same circumstances. So,
well, thanks for joining Bruce and I on this Fathering Strong podcast. We appreciate it. But we do appreciate you being along with us. This content is written especially for dads, and we source it from our weekly blog, which you can find at urbanlight.org. So join us next week on the Fathering Strong podcast for another episode.
Yeah, next week we're going to continue with the series on being pops. We're going to hit the second P and talk about providers. And we're going to learn about how providers more than just providing the finances and being the ATM for the children. So on the next edition of the podcast will come up next week. So join us, and we look forward to talking to you and seeing you then.
Yes, and I want to leave you with this final thought. It's from Proverbs 22:6. And it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Train him up in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. So in a nutshell, it's saying to raise nonviolent, respectful, courteous boys, train them with the loving, firm, vigilant, consistent fatherly discipline that they need. Goad them as much as you can with love to keep them on the right track, training them in the way that they should go. And over time, you'll see. And they will see. And they will thank you for having been that person in their life that helped to lead, guide, and direct them. So may the Lord bless you as you give your child what no one else on earth can. And that is your fully developed father love. And that's Fathering Strong.
Thanks for joining us. The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries with technical assistance from the Momentum Group, and Harold Rayford provides the theme music. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a not-for-profit organization serving the needs of families and children for nearly 30 years. Your support helps us continue turning the hearts of fathers to their children while meeting some of the immediate critical needs of struggling families with small children. Contributions of all sizes are welcomed at www.urbanlight.org.